Welcome, welcome. So thank you for coming to our session. I'm Monica and Arrambide. I'm the CEO and founder of Maven. I will share more about what Maven Youth does. It will be embedded in my discussion, but more so later in my presentation. My goal today is to kind of share a light on youth, career youth, and technology, and the impact that it's having. And me as a LGBT youth worker of 25 plus years, what that journey has looked like for me in working with queer youth in the aspects of the emergence of technology. The other thing I want to share is that I'm going to try to carve some time at the end of my presentation. So the presentation might cut off close for people online, but know that I'm going to go towards the back and have more of a discussion for people. So not necessarily Q&A, but more of like what struck you during my conversation? What are some takeaways or thoughts that you want to share out with your own journey and experience? So that's what today will look like. So to get you to understanding kind of the framework for our presentation, I wanted to share that Maven, we do tech camps for queer youth. And we just wrapped up our amazing summer camp journey. We went to multiple cities. We went to New York, Austin, Indianapolis, had an amazing conference here, San Francisco/Oakland. And with me working with these young, amazing youth leaders who help lead some of the camps and the youth that are coming to our camps, for my 25 years of experience, I've been noticing kind of a shift and change of how me as a youth worker working with young people have been shifting and changing. So this coming summer, we'll be celebrating 5 years of providing this service. And within this 5 years from the other work that I've been doing direct service with queer youth, been noticing some kind of changes along the way. So my experience, what has been changing and shifting for my experience? So I came across this image and I felt like, wow, that kind of captures it, right? Children at play. And so we can say play is defined differently now for young people. But this image really resonated with me as someone who's worked with LGBT youth in the early 90s, moving on forward from that, right? So to me, I was noticing kind of a shift in dynamics of how I personally engage with young people. And what they defined as play and engagement was shifting as well. So sometimes as an outsider perspective, someone in my generation may look at them and be like, what? That's exactly what it is, right? While someone else maybe younger be like, yeah, they are playing, they're engaging, they're connecting, right? So there's two lens to this view of this image. Also through the camps and the programs that we do with Maven, I've been noticing the shift of other things that are happening within the young people I work with. So I've been noticing self-diagnosis, right? So the technology tool of being able to look up symptoms that you have, be well-educated on depression, well-educated on phobias, well-educated on many things, started to merge when I started doing youth groups, right? So when we would start to do an activity or so forth, I had young people being able to define or self-diagnose themselves with a syndrome or an issue, right? And so that may be true and authentic for themselves, but at one time in my way of working with youth, I was not in the dialogue, right? So when people wanted to hold hands and let's talk about doing a team building, it kind of shifted about, wait, I need comfort zone, I need space, which is authentic for that young person, right? So Google that tech tool started introducing the ability for young people to start exploring and self-diagnosing themselves, right? Another shift that I noticed with the power of technology of a cell phone is that when we were doing engagement, if something happened in a social media feed, the engagement of the youth can drastically shift one way or the other, right? So I might have a young person during our activity that's like engaged with young people, excited about the day, and the matter of seconds, because someone didn't like their post or said a comment on a post or an image that got populated, their engagement all of a sudden can shift to, oh my God, the world is ending, right? In an instant. That's what technology can bring, right? So the power of having that instant information can also change and impact how people are starting to work and engage with youth, right? So I noticed, we put the emojis here, instant social media feeds, right, of how that can dictate and shape and direct the person's emotions of what they're feeling for the day. The other thing I started noticing is that most of my work has been with high school students, and I've kind of geared to that because I feel like as a youth worker, that's what I love. I love high school students, right? So that age bracket is my heart and passion. I've worked with middle school youth and know that during that developmental stage, that was very difficult for me to work with, right? It was like I couldn't resonate. Some teachers and some youth workers love that age, just like they love elementary and babies and so forth. Mine is high school. So in working with high schools in my camp, I noticed that their development was that of a middle school. So their social cues, their tantrums, like I've never really had experience high school students throwing tantrums during a camp, right? Breaking down, crying because they can't figure out something, right? That was very new for me in my past years of working with people, right? Was that their developmental seemed to be that delayed in moving into high school. The other thing I started noticing is engagement was through the cell phone, which makes sense, right? So a lot of their dating and connecting and having friends started from one time being within their local school, their local LGBT group started to emerge with anything that's possible, right? So they were building relationships online that were away from them being close, seeing them face to face. But they say, hey, I have a partner who lives in blah, 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 right? And they've been together for a number of months, right? So, but they're not together, right? I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm saying that's different. That has shifted. So when I was in the camp this past summer, this article came out from the Atlantic. I don't know if any of y'all have read it. My partner came across it because I was in discussion with her that summer, this past summer, of saying, really, I've been noticing these past years of working with youth that some things have changed for some young people that I'm working with. I've never really had to experience and journey with and working with youth in all my years, all my 25 years of working with youth. In the past probably 5 to 6 years, things have shifted. And I don't know what it is, and I don't know what it names. And I started being challenged. Like sometimes I want to say to a young person, really, come on, get the grit, just push through, right? And then realize, no, I need to look as a youth worker, come with compassion and understanding of where they're coming from. So that was my goal, I need to understand what it is. This article came out with a catchy title, right? Have smartphones destroyed a generation? And then I thought, wow, that's interesting. So I'm going to give you some of the data that this psychologist who's pulled data from the 1930s on up to where we are now of data that they've been collecting with youth. So collecting the same kind of questions and information that they share, they ask the same 14-year-old demographics, okay, year later, not the same 14-year-old, but a 14-year-old, same demographics, will continue to repeat, right, since the 1930s. So I want to share with you some of the data. I'm not saying I endorse this. And if you're a data scientist in this room, you'll be like, hey, wait, how was this collected and want more information? I just want to share what this psychologist has shared. Some of it has resonated with me, and some of it I still push back and be like, what the, no, that can't be true, right? But I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a science data person. I'm going to just share what was printed in this article. So this psychologist is collecting this data and has noticed, they mark, and all the slides that you're going to see is the introduction of the iPhone, which some of y'all know the iPhone kind of revolutionized how we connect and connect with folks. All right, so the emergence of a smartphone, so I don't want to endorse a particular platform. The emergence of an iPhone came out roughly around 2007. And so the data is going to show you, and you could say also in 2007, this and this was happening too, right? We don't know. This article puts basically a smartphone emerges 2007, and let's look at the data that happens at that time. So smartphone gets introduced. What youth have shared, right? Once again, it's the youth sharing this at that time, that they don't really, the decline of hanging out with friends. So when I share the same data with the youth at our camps, they say, well, hanging out is different, right? Like hanging out could be hanging out on the phone, right? Or hanging out, but the question was, how often do you hang out with friends, right? That's what the question is. And so the youth are sharing, they're hanging out less and less with their friends, without their parents. So that's another key element, is that parents are starting to be really involved and engaged because of technology with the lives of young people. So without hanging out with friends, which allows you to test and grow. Remember, you're at an age where you want to take risks and you're trying new things, you want to explore. But guess what? Imagine if your parent was right with you when you go hang out, go to the movies, go to a concert, go to all that stuff, your parents with you, right? So kind of hanging out with friends alone started to decrease drastically. Another thing was less dating, right? Once again, young people, when we present this, they define dating as different. They say, well, when I hear dating, that means we literally go out on a restaurant, or someone pays a meal, right? We go to a movie in person, right? That's a date. So of course, I wouldn't say I'm dating, but I hang out at the youth center, at the LGBT center, but that could be dating. I'm kind of getting to know someone. So the definition for them of dating has changed. But once again, the question is, are you dating? And so young people, when they introduce the smartphone, there's been a decline of young people dating each other. Most likely to feel alone. Have everybody, I myself experienced when sometimes I'm on some social media feed, I actually get depressed. Here I seek to, hey, I wonder what so-and-so is doing, and then I'm looking at all the stuff that's going on in the world, or other people are doing better or cooler things than I am. And sometimes, honestly, I myself personally get kind of feeling alone and depressed and isolated by using some social media feeds. Well, there has been an increase. Once again, smartphone hits, and there's like a spike, right? A spike within 7 years of young people sharing. A lot of times, they really do feel alone. And if everybody sitting in this room who's gone through the adolescence would say, I always say that. When I was young, I always said, man, I feel alone. No one understands me. That is true. But prior to that, that question got asked, and a lot of the young people still didn't do that spike that raised the data to the level that it is. So yes, people were feeling alone, but when asked that question in the prior years, didn't get triggered. A lot of the youth would say, you know what, I don't mostly feel alone, right? So that has shifted. Don't get enough sleep. That's another thing I would think young people don't sleep, they want to stay up all night, right? Well, once again, here we go again. Do you find yourself personally in the middle of the night waking up, flipping through your phone, right? The access of technology, once again, allows you to be connected even when you should be resting. And one thing that any teacher or any youth worker that has worked with young people say, if they don't get a good meal and a good rest, they're not their full potential when we come into a learning setting. So imagine for a young person who wants to know, they have a desire to be accepted, constantly on their feed, what is so-and-so saying? What music or what video are they saying? Oh, they post a picture. Oh, haha, that's great. I have to heart it, right? So doing that throughout the night, what does that prepare them in being engaged into the school systems? So once again, what's a teenager of this day? So we have to be reminded that being a teenager is the most transformative time in your life, period. No other time in your life, not getting a divorce, not your pet passing, not your parents passing. The most transformative time in your life is adolescence. So that time from 13, it actually goes up to 24, that is the most transition in your life that's happening. Your body's changing, your chemistry's changing, your thoughts, your brain doesn't get fully developed until the age 24. So that's why young people take risks and drive risky, the conscious level of what it means, the understanding of truly what happens if I drink and drive doesn't really resonate until your brain has fully have the capacity of understanding that, right? Having time to reflect. So here's the most transformative time of your life, of you questioning and exploring new ideas, being self-absorbed, having peer pressure, right? So you're so influenced by so-and-so, not by your parents, by my best friend or this person in school said this. It is at high levels. Emotional levels are very, very high, right, at this age. So now when you think of your development, the most transformative time in your life, you have the power of technology. Imagine when you're taking risks, you're questioning who you are, your desire to develop is really based on what people perceive you, what they think your role should be in society. So when you're testing out your personality, when people are cutting their hair, they're changing different clothes, being the cheerleader, that's all shaped and defined, believe it or not by you. It is shaped by what society frames you and what role you should be. You should be the cheerleader because you fit that demographic. You should be the nerd, smart person because you fit that demographic. So you can try, a nerdy person could try, I'm going to cut my hair, I'm going to do this and that, and I can guarantee you, by the time adolescence hits, society will shape you to what they think you should be, right? So introduce technology. What does technology do for young people who are exploring and developing what they will be their authentic self later? What do you think that technology introduces? Well, guess what? Technology allows you to make your teeth whiter, makes your blemishes go away, make you thinner, allows you to get the right exact tweet or message that you want, the framework of your message. You can think about exactly what I'm going to say to sound really witty and smart or really cool, right? I can take selfies and pictures. So that's what technology brings and introduces for the young people of today. So now when we share this with the youth at our camps, because we have these discussions, right, and the youth are talking, I say, what's more important? You or the alter ego that's been developed online? What's more important to you? What do you think the youth would say? They will say what they've been investing because they are the architects of being able, through technology, they're allowed to be architects and the ultra egos. So they create this ultra place of, this is the best of me that I can present out to the world because technology provides that for me. And what if that's not good enough? What if all technology, the tools that you have in the forefront, right on your phone, I can make myself thinner, smarter, beautiful. What if that is not good enough? Where do you go from that? All right, well, we'll picture this. When we do our tech camps, remember, we're in different states, different areas, not just in San Francisco and Oakland, right? We're in Texas and other areas. It never fails when we have a discussion, young people will share. There's a database in my high school that these group of guys have of all the girls in our school. Pictures of them, right? Of pictures that they shared out with, look who, because now they're able to capture, right? Now we place young people in the ability to be placed into creating these images, right? So at my day, it was about dirty magazines, right? Maybe dirty videos, right, will populate. But I wasn't the architect. I didn't create that image, right? I was viewing it and witnessing as a bystander. More so now we are the ones capturing it. Because it's not sexy now to be like, because any young person could look up porn, right, on their phone. That's not cool. What's cool is that girl that's sitting in your front row at your science class. That's cool. I want to see that, right? So now we're shifting young people to now create a database of images of other young people through technology. What about the selfie movement? I love selfies. I take selfies. But what does that mean? What does that mean when you're young and taking a selfie of images of things that are happening behind you? The selfie plus smile equals empathy? Can these images share that, do they have a true understanding of empathy, meaning you can place yourself in someone else's shoes? That's empathy. Not sympathy, meaning like, oh, you lost your dad, I feel sad for you. Empathy is like, wow, that person might feel really tremendously sad because this and this isn't a change in their life, because you can literally see yourself in their shoes. That's empathy. So when we see these images, the youth says, well, you don't know the perspective of the lady, the young girl in front of the coffin. You don't know, maybe it was just an off moment. I don't know, taking a selfie in front of a coffin of whoever that is. You don't know who that is. Seems a little different for me, right? A selfie image of a homeless person in the background. What is that? Like, what is that? What is the message that you think they're sharing? Someone trapped, a group of people trapped in an elevator. Let me smile and take a picture of it, because this is pretty funny. Empathy. So do tech companies know? Do they know? Do they have algorithms of understanding how youth are feeling? It surprises me, as innovative as we are, we don't have an algorithm for bullying. No one has yet created a tool that can identify an individual who utilizes the same words, right? Attacks certain people online at a given time, right? Like, there's not an algorithm that you can figure out, but yet you can figure out what kind of tea I like at Starbucks, right? So Facebook, just a few years ago, there was some controversy. Sorry for anybody who works at Facebook. But they were sharing with their advertisers that they knew the emotions of a young person. And so maybe this is a great way to introduce your product at this given time. Like, they're able to understand where emotions are flowing, right? So they can understand that, but yet they can't create an algorithm for the biggest thing that's impacting our youth, which is cyberbullying. So the courageous conversations that need to be moved today, and for yourself, is sitting in this room. You have the power to be the innovators to create that. You have the power. Like, if you don't agree with the data that I just showed you, well, then why are we collecting data about our LGBT youth and their access to technology? I Google it every time trying to figure that out, and I don't have that information, right? So why you're sitting in the space to have the ability to really understand where our LGBT youth are in regards to technology, but there's no data or research behind it just yet. Having courageous conversations is also talking about the privacy setting. Why is that always so hard to navigate and find, right? Some of y'all find it very easy, but an average individual who's accessing a tool or an application may find it really difficult to change their privacy setting, right? And why is that? So it's time for us to really have these types of courageous conversations of what type of impact when we introduce a tool, what does that mean in society? Because now it's not okay to just introduce a tool and then move away from, like, oh, there's this consequences of it, right? Just like us, we're in the most highest level of an experiment with social media. Social media, there's not research. We're right now experimenting with the impact of the tool that has changed the way we live our lives. There has not been one tech tool that has been introduced other than social media that has transformed so rapidly how we connect. That wasn't the microwave. That wasn't electricity. That wasn't gas. It wasn't the automobile. You would think all these things, because those went in small stages. You had to save up to get an automobile. They had to introduce it into a fair and try to inspire you to utilize a tool you don't know. Social media, how fast did it hit? Hit like this. And yet we don't know the implications of what that means on a young developing mind, right? We don't. I don't know. People are trying to gather that data now, but we're right in the midst of this scientific experiment. So we need to have these conversations. So what is Maven up to? What are we doing? We're having these conversations. Yes, we empower young people to explore tech careers. We're creating a safe space for LGBT youth to come in a space to meet other LGBT tech professionals. But we're also having these conversations. We're having conversations with our volunteers that give of their time for our camp. And we're having conversations with young people to put it on their radar to start thinking about, how is this really impacting my life? How do I engage in this world, the good and the bad of technology, right? Technology has a lot of positive assets that really make a young person, especially an LGBT person, really connected. That I'm not going to deny. What I'm trying to highlight is things that we're afraid to talk about, right? We're afraid to talk about how these are impacting. So at our camps and our programs, we try to share that and have that dialogue. So once again, the data that was shared, hey, I'm with you, right? Some of it's like, oh, I don't know about that. And then some of it is, yes, I'm curious about that. I want to kind of explore it, because even I have a child. You might say, I have a 14-year-old and I feel so connected with them. Why is that? Well, hopefully this can share some thoughts to think about. And lastly, because once again, I really wanted to carve some time to have discussions. We can't do Q&A on the live feed, but I really want to be able to go in the back of the room and for us to share thoughts. It might not be just with me, but with other folks. What comes to mind when you think of technology and queer youth? And once again, I have to thank, I always do with GitHub. GitHub is our national sponsor. They're the partners that allow Maven to do the programming that we do. And not to carve time to acknowledge that would be such a disservice. So please check us out, have those conversations during your break. I'll be in the back of the room to help facilitate a discussion, our thoughts, our comments that people want to share. So thank you.